Hi everybody, it's Maddie here from support. Thank you guys for jumping on. I'm just going to give us a few more minutes for some more people to come on and just wait for Matthew to hop on as well. Hi Matthew, how are you? It's Maddie here from support at Oxbridge.
I'll take it off mute.
Yes, please. I'll be the co-host as well if you would like.
Yes, excellent. Fantastic. Thank you so much. How's things going today?
Yeah, pretty well, thank you.
Good. Apologies, my couple of minutes late now. I just misplaced the meeting invite. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I think people are still jumping on anyways. We have had like back-to-back Zoom calls all day.
Right.
But this is, even if heaps of people don't jump on, these are always recorded, so people can come back to them.
Very good.
I'm going to turn my screen off so I'm not just awkwardly hanging here, but I'll pass it on to you whenever you're ready to start.
Lovely, fantastic. I'm just preparing my screen for the moment. Bear with me 1 second.
All right.
So I'll get into that in just 1 moment. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm pretty much ready to go there. So I'll just share my screen with you for the moment.
Awesome.
If I could get you to confirm that you can see my screen, please.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So welcome everybody to the Archistar property platform. Thank you so much for your interest in the system. So the objective for me today basically is to introduce you to the functionality in the system. I want to talk to you about how real estate agents, for example, and property developers would be interested in using the platform and gain some benefit from it. Realistically, today is probably going to be an introduction more than anything else. But obviously we're here to help you ongoing with any questions. So should you have questions, feel free to contact us, put the requests through to Paul or whoever it is deemed to be a sort of a central contact for you guys. But obviously we'll obviously help you with those answers. So I'm not sure in terms of the familiarity that you guys have got with the platform, but I'll start with a general sort of screen orientation for you to sort of understand the different features that are available in the platform and where you can find them. So the Archistar property platform essentially is here to help people find sites and identify sites that are suitable for development. There are a range of data sets that we have available in the platform, and essentially there are 3 strings, I suppose is the term that I'll use, to the bow for Archistar, so to speak. One of those key strings then would be the ability to do due diligence assessments for properties and for suburbs and I'll cover off some of those features with you shortly. A second key capability, or string to the bow, so to speak, is the ability to actually find sites that are either currently on market at the moment, or perhaps more importantly, not on market at the moment. And then the third capability is what we refer to as the 3D designer technology, the ability to generate 3D building designs. You may or may not necessarily be too interested in that feature for the moment. So I'm probably going to feature heavily today on the due diligence capability and the ability for you to find sites. And I'll pause after each little part. And obviously, if you guys have got questions, please feel free to shout those questions out at me. Which actually takes me to the question section. Before I do, does anybody have any questions that they need to throw out at me before we begin this this process?
No.
Okay. Okay. So look, I'll usually pause a few seconds just to sort of give people the opportunity to come off mute and shout out at me. So, all right. So let me commence then. So the first thing I'm going to just say to you is that essentially what we're looking at the moment is what I would refer to as map mode. All right. So when we're looking at the screen in map mode, then obviously we have the ability to manipulate the map over here. There's a couple of key features on the left-hand side of the platform, which really are applicable for sort of high-level usage of the map. So the ability, for instance, in this new site feature here, to search for sites. So you can either type in a specific address that you know about or type in a suburb, something like that. That'll navigate you to the correct area of the map, of course. There's the ability for you to amalgamate sites. Maybe you're talking to a number of people in a particular neighborhood, and there's the possibility that you might be able to secure them as a bunch of sites together, therefore making that area more attractive. Merge sites lets you amalgamate a range of sites on the screen. And there's the ability for you to essentially draw your own shape on the site, should you be looking at a particular area and maybe you want to run an assessment of someone's backyard. You know, maybe there's a building right at the very front of the site and you want to have a look at the backyard and sort of see how big it is and could you potentially develop that area, for instance. So some high-level capabilities. There's also the My Sites feature over here, which is essentially your search history, the ability for you to favorite sites that you've looked at that you might want to come back to again in the future. And then basically this history button here that will show you every site that you click on in the platform. I'll be clicking on a couple of sites and showing you the type of information that's available. So there's some quick sort of high-level capabilities in terms of orientation of the map. I won't cover this My Projects feature for the moment. That's an in-depth one that we'll talk about at another time. So with the map information that we can see, there's a couple of buttons on the far right-hand screen at the bottom that allow you to manipulate the map in a variety of ways. Change between 2D and 3D mode, for instance. Zoom in and zoom out, reorient the map to north-south should you have knocked it out of that particular alignment, for example. So you can play with the map. But perhaps a couple of the key buttons with the map feature is the ability for you to take measurements. All right, so imagine then that you're interested in looking at a particular property. You're looking at this site here at number 109 Mitchell Street, for example, in Glebe. And you want to know how close the distance is in terms of walking distance to the nearest shopping center, for instance, or bus stop or something like that. This measurement tool here will essentially allow you to basically walk the street to the nearest area and then hit enter, and that'll tell you the distance that you've just walked in that case. So that can be helpful to understand locality, for instance, in terms of distance to near assets. There's also an area measurement tool as well. So again, you know, let's use this site as an example. Maybe you're interested in working out sort of how large the backyard is. I'll show you the aerial mapping information in a moment. But basically, this area measurement tool here will allow you to take measurements from the map and work out what the square meterage is that we're looking at, should you be so inclined. So those are relatively sort of straightforward features. But realistically, then, in terms of where some of the sort of the key data sets that you can be using to understand areas are found in these menus on the far right-hand side of the screen. All right, so part of the subscription access that you guys have got. So if I open up this add-ons menu, first of all, you can see a range of the different partnership arrangements that we've got with different entities that allow us to access different sets of data. So for example, we have access to domain here. All right, so we can turn on the domain toggle. And this is now then going to start to give us sales listings information for this particular suburb. So if I just zoom out a moment, excuse me 1 minute whilst I just close that screen there. So here we can see, as I'm zooming out, we've got a series of green blobs on the screen basically, and we can look between sales and rentals and sold properties. So obviously useful then, because this allows us to get an understanding of sort of sales history for particular properties in the area. Obviously, of course, if we're looking at a particular site, it means we can then go and check out the sales around to understand sort of comparisons to that. Looking over at the domain section over here on the far right-hand side, we can convert those dots to a list by clicking on this property listings button. And so we'll get little thumbnails related to all of the dots on the screen. We can convert that information to a list by coming and clicking on these icons. So you can start to really sort of get the information into lists. And there's also a download capability which allows you to extract this information into Excel or CSV or something, where you can then start to manipulate the detail based on whether it's a house, apartment, 2-bed, 3-bed, whatever the criteria are. I will pause in a moment, I promise. Final couple of things in terms of the listings information. So there's also the filtering capability. So obviously the implication might be then that perhaps you're looking at a 2-bedroomed house or a 3-bedroomed house, 2 bathrooms, and you want to know the comparable sales for properties of that nature in the surrounding area. So we go to house, we'll pick, let's look at houses, let's go for 2 bathrooms, and a range of other filters that we could use in that case, including price and land size and things like that. Show properties. So that's now going to filter those properties to give us similar ones to the ones that we're already looking at here. And again, we can chuck them into a list or export them to Excel or whatever we need to do. Finally, in terms of the listings information, we got insights. All right, so it's all very well seeing the information dumped basically as a list on the screen, but what does that actually mean in terms of how the suburb is performing currently or historically? Especially, you know, so how's it picking up after sort of post-COVID, for instance? So by turning on the suburb insights, we've got some last 12 months analysis basically. So trend analysis over the case of the course of the last 12 months, and you can sort it between apartment and housing sales. So that may be helpful for you then to sort of get a general understanding of how that market is performing, and also some historical performance as well back to 2017 in terms of how the different types of properties have been performing in that area as well. So that would be the first data set perhaps that may be of use for you, the ability to find out what's currently on market at the moment, what's sold recently, what the general pricing areas are for those particular areas, and some trend analysis for that. So talk to me, please. What questions does anybody have about any of that information to begin with? I'll get my pen ready. I realized that you guys are probably all over property information. So fair enough. So yeah, first data set would then would be listings information. Next information then would relate to development applications that are going off in a particular suburb. So why might it be useful for you to be able to look at DAs that are going off in a particular area? All right, so first thing then is that if I was just to come in here and turn on the BCI DA information, for instance, and zoom out over a suburb. Okay, I'm expected to see BCI come on there. I'll use Cordell as the example then for the moment. So by turning on the DA information, this is going to give you a range of benefits. All right, so the first key piece of information that may be useful to know is there any construction activity that's going off in the suburb that we're looking at the moment that might potentially affect demand for property in the area? All right, so for example, some of these suburbs out in Western Sydney, for instance, at the moment, they've just had some train stations go in over the course of the last 6 to 12 months. Right, so it would be useful to know whether there was any significant infrastructure going off in that particular area that might suddenly make that suburb more commutable to the city, for instance. All right, so knowing what DAs are going to go off, say, infrastructure-wise, can be helpful. But the DA information will also show you a range of different construction types, residential, commercial, retail, you name it, it's going to be in there. So for again, other key sort of examples of what might be useful. So you see that Westfield, for instance, are in the process of remodeling a shopping centre, or there's a childcare centre just going to be going into a particular area, is going to make it more attractive to families. I won't labour that point anymore. But so seeing what DAs are going off in a suburb might be helpful. And the other thing to recognise as well, of course, is that a lot of these DAs can actually provide you with precedent setting in terms of what's actually possible in those suburbs. So for instance, if you're looking at a particular site at the moment and you're wondering whether it's developable with townhouses on it, for example, you can basically go through the different DAs and have a look at sort of what other types of developments are going off in that area that might match that type. I've just clicked on a boarding house there. However, if you come over to the Cordell, so I've got the Cordell listings and click on that, we'll then see a range of different DAs that are going off in that particular area. So we've got apartment developments and units and boarding houses. Okay, there seems to be a few of those. There'll be a few townhouses in there as well. So why is it useful for you to be able to see those types of things? Well, okay, I've just said precedent setting. So obviously, if you're looking at a particular property, maybe not in a great area to sort of talk about townhouses right now, but if you're looking at a particular property and you want to know what you could possibly do on that site, then you can use some of the surrounding DAs to give you a sort of understanding of what's potentially possible there. The other thing that's really useful for DA information, and this is something that we're talking to Paul at the moment, is the ability to understand who is associated with those DAs. Now I'm going to use apartments and units as an example here. Okay, so the implication is that these organizations, so Cordell and BCI that are researching these DAs, they're also researching the associated contacts that are linked to those DAs as well. Right, so for instance, if I come to the Cordell DAs and open those up, we've got contact information in there. So here's an example of a site where Cordell have identified that there's a developer listed. Why would it be useful for you guys, if you're doing sort of real estate, then to know who the developer is associated with a block of units, for instance, then? So obviously the implication there is that if you know about this particular DA early enough in its life, then the implication might be that you could contact the developer that's associated with that DA before those apartments actually start to get built. That's where you're trying to then source a contract possibly with the developer to maybe sell those properties off plan. And obviously, once you can start to develop a relationship with that developer, that sets you with inroads ongoing then for you to secure future projects that they're going to be working on as well. And a second thing, of course, is that a lot of those developers obviously will probably be retaining a unit or apartment or two in the building that they're developing. And obviously the implication there is they may well need somebody to be managing those properties for them. So there's a potential opportunity for you to work with that developer to help perhaps develop the rent roll for your real estate practices as well. So knowing DAs in a suburb can be really, really helpful. Being able to understand what's going off in the area, using them for precedent setting, and using them as potential contact points for developing relationships with key people ongoing could be quite helpful as well. So I'm going to just pause there a moment in terms of that. Talk to me if anybody has any questions about DA information, please. Okay, that's cool. I mean, can I just clarify sort of the sort of things that I'm talking about here? So these things are of interest to you, are they? I mean, obviously, just to get a bit of feedback from you that I'm sort of talking about key features that you would find useful. So someone please talk to me that that this information is actually proving to be beneficial for you.
Yes, it is. If it's one site that you can go to rather than search individual city councils, that's great.
Okay. I'm certainly happy to look at sites. So look, what I would probably do for the moment is I'm going to keep it relatively generalistic, but I'm more than happy to look at a site, absolutely. What's that site address, may I ask?
Are you asking me?
So I'm sorry, yes. So do you have, are you saying to go to a particular site, or you just want me to get on with it and click on the site and have a look at some information?
No, I was simply saying that it is useful. It's a one go-to site as opposed to searching individual city councils sites and looking at the development applications that have been lodged with them. So it is useful. And you're asking for some feedback.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So yes, look, yes, thank you. Yeah, we are. The objective here is to try to streamline your processes as much as possible by providing as much information for you in one centralized location as we can. And having the ability to essentially stick it all on the same map as well at the same time can be quite a good thing too. So, so yeah. Look, I am conscious of time, so I'm going to move on a bit then. So we've also got in terms of your add-ons, then we've also got the near map high resolution aerial imagery. So if I just turn that on, so we can turn on near map in a range of locations, but turn it on from here. So there's a couple of advantages for the near map data. First thing is notice the date stamp in the bottom right hand corner of the screen here then. So this particular image that we're looking at was actually last taken late January. Now that can be really useful, obviously having recent imagery there, especially in high resolution, especially with COVID going off recently. It simply means that we don't have to necessarily go out to the site to see what's there and confirm that it's actually still is that building. You know, last thing we want to know is that when we turn up there, see that it was actually knocked down 6 months ago and there's now a block of units on that site. So having recent imagery is a good thing. Now we can also, because it is high resolution, we can also take measurements from the map. So I'm just going to quickly jump into this data layers feature here. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom and turn off the lots and roads cadastre layer so that we've got clear imagery of what we're looking at on the screen. As I said, we've got measurement tools, so line measurement and area measurement tools. So essentially we can be looking around here and again, I'm not in a great area to demo, but if we sort of zoom in on this particular site, you know, how large is the backyard of that particular property? Well, we can basically use the near map imagery to essentially go in and work out, all right, the backyard for that particular area is around 100 square meters. All right, so high resolution aerial imagery, recent imagery, and the ability to take measurements from there as well. Now that also means, because it is high resolution, that we can simply use it as a bit of a prospecting tool as well. We can simply take a flight over the suburb looking for sites that are potentially developable. You know, are there any, again, I really picked a bad area here, but you know, are there any areas that are potential maybe in terms of you know, future development? We might be interested in checking out this site here. There doesn't appear to be a lot of stuff going on there, for example. Okay, so we've got a range of add-ons, different data sets that you can access that are coming from our third-party partners. As well as the add-ons information, we also have a range of data layers that you can overlay over the map. So if I just turn off near map for the moment, and I'm just going to jump back down and turn on the lots and roads layer again so we can get an understanding what we're looking at here. So things like zoning. All right, you know, you're looking at a particular area. What can you do with that site? You can see that we've got the zoning there. You go click on that site and the zoning information will then start to talk to you about what you could possibly do with that site. I'll cover this information panel in more detail in a moment. We've got a range of different layers, so detailed contour layers, and I'm not going to go through all of these again for time. So detailed contour layers. Well, all right then, you're looking at a particular site at the moment. Is there a problem in terms of developing that site in relation to perhaps the amount of slope on there? So looking at these sites here, we've got a few contours that are at 1 meter increments relatively close together. So there's a bit of slope going on there. Is that going to be an issue in terms of generating and developments for a particular site? Is something that you can take into consideration. As well as that, then we've got things like flood maps and bushfire heritage. As I say, there's a range of potential due diligence risk potential maps that you can turn on to have a look at the site as well. So that was actually a really quick coverage in terms of the different data layers that are in there. Now, I will again just pause 1 second quickly. Anybody got any questions about that information before I move on from there?
You did mention that there was a facility within this program you've got to identify properties that are for sale currently that have development potential.
So obviously, yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so certainly, obviously the implication here is that I'm then going to obviously be talking about, so I'm looking at the listings information. So by turning the domain information on, for example, and or the CoreLogic information as well, the implication is that we can obviously click on sites and see those that are currently listed for sale simply by seeing the associated dot maps on the screen. So we can see that. And then, of course, in terms of understanding those that have got DAs on them, we can then come down and turn on the CordL DA map as well, for example. And the implication would then be, if we're seeing circles matching with triangles, then the implication would be in that case that we've got properties that are currently for sale or recently sold, I should say. We can change that as well, that have currently got DA applications going on as well. Is that what you were referring to, may I ask?
No, it's not. It's property that is currently for sale, can be developed.
Yeah. Okay.
Not with a current DA that can be purchased and the DA submitted to council.
Okay, so so forgive me then. So let me just go into that one. So thank you. So obviously I might need to get a bit more detail from you in that case, just to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. But So the implication would be, if we've got the features there, that when you click on a particular property, that then is going to open up this side panel here. Now, in this instance, it's actually registering a series of properties listed together, but I'll click on the individual lot for the moment to bring that one up. And so once you've clicked on that particular site, we then get access to the specific site features on the left-hand side of the page here. So, for example, we've got access to the site information, talking to us about what is possible for that particular site. An example of that would be, okay, we can see the square meterage for the site, fair enough. We can also see what we refer to as the permitted uses for what is allowed on that particular site as well. Now, it doesn't specifically indicate in this instance that a DA is currently going on that particular site, but the idea would be obviously that if we've got the listings turned on and we can see that it's for sale, you can then click on that site and understand what is possible in terms of potential development from there. And I'm sorry, I'm going to just defer back again to the question. How does that sit in terms of what you're talking about related to DAs and sites that are currently for sale?
You've answered my question. I was curious as to whether you had the functionality for this program of yours to identify, without going into properties that are for sale, identify properties in Globo for sale that can be further developed but don't currently have a DA lodged. So, for example,
okay.
A property with a backyard where you can build a townhouse.
I see. Forgive me. I'm going to pitch that back at you, if I may, just to make sure that I'm 100% certain in terms of what you're talking about there. So obviously we can see there's a range of sites on the screen at the moment, and there would potentially be a series of sites on there that we might consider to be underdeveloped, possibly. And the implication might be then that is it possible to be able to see sites on the screen where we could potentially get extra development on that site, either by knocking down and rebuilding, or keeping the existing site in place and building something new in, say, in the backyard or something like that? Is that what you mean in a kind of roundabout way?
Well, I guess so. My curiosity is in properties that are currently for sale where development potential hasn't been identified, where simply because of lack of due diligence, and the functionality you have with your program to identify those sites in a very quick and efficient manner.
Yeah. Okay, let me talk about the filters for the moment, just quickly. So certainly there is the capability of using a feature that we refer to as underdeveloped lots. And there is actually a bit of work going on in terms of refining the accuracy of these types of things as well at the moment. But essentially the idea with the underdeveloped lots feature is that if you were to say, select, so show me sites in this particular suburb that are suitable for townhouse construction, for example. Now, our system would recognize that townhouses, for instance, would have a specific lot size requirement. All right, so say 200 square meters or something like that. So if you were looking at a site that was, say, 1,000 square meters, and the minimum lot size for that would be, say, 200 square meters, something like that. What the system will do is it will look at the current build form that's in place on that particular site, and it's going to work out whether the building that is currently there at the moment is appropriate in terms of that particular site, or whether you could get extra development on there. So the implication would be that we'd then be able to go, all right, show me sites that are zoned for townhouses, show me those that are what we'd consider to be underdeveloped. And essentially then the platform will start looking at different areas and start to come back and indicate sites that it reckons you could get further development on. But at the moment, the complexities that you're referring to are not quite there. We do have a project that we're working on. We're actually pretty close to completing. It's called the Dynamic Neighborhood Assessment Project, DNA project, which is essentially then looking at a suburb. It's looking at the developments that are currently in that suburb and those that are currently going off as well at the moment. It's going to be taking into consideration things like square meterage for the sites, you know, what you could potentially put on there in terms of minimum lot sizes. And that DNA project is actually going to be, it's going to be able to do essentially what you're saying. So you'd be able to look at that particular suburb there, for instance, and go, all right, at the moment, this particular site is suitable for additional townhouse development on there at the moment. It's currently listed as being, it's currently suggested as being underdeveloped. At the moment, it's manual. You would need to look at a site. You'd need to perhaps have a look at Nearmap and see what's there at the moment. Check out the square meterage that's associated with the site. Have a look at the minimum lot sizes that are potential for that area as well, and then work that out yourself. We're not quite there in terms of automatically identifying that information for you right now.
Thank you for clarifying that. Well, look, I'm obviously just going to pause here at the moment. In terms of the different features of the platform, we've also, I just want to highlight over here on the left-hand side of the screen some of the more site-specific features that are applicable as well. So, for example, I've already highlighted the fact that we've got the site details. So we can see, as I say, site area at the top, the general zoning that's appropriate for that particular site, the permitted uses in terms of what you can do there. We do also show the various planning controls that's appropriate. So at floor space ratios, for example, and quite a detailed analysis of what is possible in terms of the various planning options. And that information may well be useful for you in terms of what you're looking at or not. But as you scroll further down the screen, down this site details panel, we get to a bit of sales history. There's a couple of different types of reports that you can purchase here. So you can purchase a title search from there as well. There's a contamination report that you can download if you need to know if there's any issues in terms of site contamination, historically speaking. But perhaps more interesting and more useful might be the site history as well in terms of sales activity. You would need to have a Price Finder subscription or an RP Data subscription to be able to access this information. So whichever of the two it is that you've got, I'm pretty sure you guys think you've got RP Data possibly there, but so you turn on the appropriate data set and you'll get access to the information that is being provided by either CoreLogic or Domain related to the history of this particular property, including the ownership information as well. So there's a range of sales history that's associated with that site there. Additionally, should you need to take measurements, you can do so. So we've got a measurement tool here. So this one's slightly different from the measurement tools on the right-hand side of the map. This measure tool allows you to extract the measurements that you take from the site and put them into the report that I'm going to be talking to you about shortly. All right, so we can take square meterage measurements. I'll just very quickly just not be too precise with my inputs there, and we can also take straight line measurements as well should you need to know what the distance from the front of the building to the front of the boundary is, for instance, as well. You can take some of those measurements, and having done that, as I say, that information will then translate into the report. I'll show you that in a minute.
So you have a measurement capability, so say allows you to take measurements from there. And then there's also the quick estimate feature. Why is the quick estimate feature useful? Well, essentially what it allows you to do is a quick back of the napkin assessment of what might be possible on this particular site. So for instance, if we come into the townhouse site here, I've already got a series of defaults that I've got in place at the moment. I'd be happy to talk to you about how you get that information in place. But essentially what the defaults would be covering would be things like what's the average lot size that this site's going to be broken up into, what's the average sale price per, say, townhouse in this case, what's the average construction cost, that all this information you can get from the platform. So once those defaults are in place, the idea with the quick estimate feature is that you simply input a minimum lot size. All right, so I'm going to chop this site up into 150 square meter lots and then calculate. And the quick estimate feature is going to throw out a potential in terms of what you could possibly do for that site. So based on the inputs that I've got in default there, the theory would be that I might potentially be able to get 2 townhouses off that site. Assuming I manage to sell them for the price that I've input, then I should make about $2 million profit from that. Sorry, I'll try that again. I'll make just shy of $2 million in terms of sales. Profit from that's going to be about $380,000. Development costs, so assuming that it costs what I say it does to build, it's going to be about $1.5 million. And so I'm left with this residual land value, this magic number here. So what this number is telling me is, assuming that I could purchase that piece of land for $628,000, then I should be able to make that amount of money from the sale. I make that sort of profit, and and I'm going to hit the numbers that are shown in there. So why is that useful for you? The implication of you knowing that particular number is that when you're talking to the homeowner from there, you will already have prepared in your mind then what sort of costs you can go to if you're negotiating the sale for the property to be able to hit the numbers that are being shown in this list. If, for instance, CoreLogic tells you that currently this property, the sell price for this property is, $500,000, for instance, then obviously the implication is that any real estate agent that's going in and talking to the people on this particular property are going to be pitching their prices anywhere around that number. Some will be lower, some will be higher. But the advantage for you is that when you go in to talk to the homeowner about this particular property, you're armed with the fact that in actual fact, you could talk to them about this number. Hey, everybody's telling you that the property is worth $500,000, and it is, according to our statistical analysis, it's worth around that. But actually to a developer, this property is worth considerably more. If you wanted to, homeowner, you can talk to me. What I'll do is I'll put you in contact with the developer. We could get anywhere up to $630,000 for your property. That makes you more attractive to the homeowner than any of the others that are sort of just talking about a pure sale price. Is that something that that you would be doing, may I ask? I mean, are you sort of approaching homeowners and sort of talking about potential development opportunity?
Yes. Yep.
Excellent. So just very quickly for me to recap all of that. And so obviously the implication is that you have the ability to access a range of sites in New South Wales. We can obviously use a series of data sets. So you've got sales listings, you've got DA information, you've got near map. So that information can be helpful to keep you up to speed in terms of trend analysis and sales activity for suburbs. You've probably got your fingers all over that pulse already anyway. Having access to DA information can be helpful because it can give you an understanding of where a suburb is going in terms of attractability, if there's key developments going on in there that might be useful. It also means that you can, having access to DA information means that you would be able to get at some key contacts that are associated with those DAs as well. That can help you with your future sort of sales pipelines in terms of getting more sales for selling off plan, for instance, and perhaps also helping to develop the sort of the management list of properties that you've got might help with the cash flow, for instance. There's a range of data layers that you can use that can help you to understand from a due diligence point of view, things like, you know, are there any risks in terms of contours, sort of slope issues? Is the site in a flood prone area, for instance? Is there a bushfire risk? We're sort of kind of right in the middle of the city at the moment, so it's not too bad at that point of view. You know, so there's a range of data layers that you can turn on to assess. There's a series of filter options you can use to find sites that match certain criteria. And again, I can certainly talk to you about different techniques that we can use to filter specific properties. And then once we've done all of that, we can then start clicking on particular properties to understand more about them in terms of the planning controls, the zoning, that type of thing, bit of sales history associated as well. Take some measurements from the site, do a quick estimate, understand what's going on in terms of potential development yield for those sites as well. And then we can combine all of that information into what we refer to as the development due diligence report. So we can click on this download report button here. It's going to bring us to the setup panel or page for the report. First thing I would point out is that you can change the logo and the photos in there. So you can obviously put in your company details and sort of tailor the report, including your color scheme as well, tailor the report more to your alignment in terms of your organization. And essentially then we can get at the various page contents of the report by coming to these panels on the left. We can see there's a range of detail provided in the report. So some information related to the specific property that you're looking at the moment, types of permitted land uses that are possible for that report. So there's a couple of pages of that one. We've got things like the planning details, so the floor space ratio, maximum building heights, that type of thing. We've got a series of data layers that identify, so the zoning, if it's heritage listed, if it's flood risk or bushfire, for instance, there's a range of different options in there, if there's any slope issues. So you can see there's quite a range of different options in there. If you've done a quick estimate for that particular site as well, then that one can be included in there as well. So that would also be included in the document too. So as I say, there's obviously a range of options and pages that are available in that particular report. And the final thing would be to hit this download button that would then convert that report to a PDF. So this is then going to allow you to create your due diligence report that you would then be able to pass on to your client and talk to them about the research that you've been doing with that particular property. So how's that for you for the moment?
I guess, go ahead, sorry.
Please continue. Yeah. Sorry. So someone was going to speak there. So so forgive me. So who have I got on the phone that's asking questions there?
Well, I interrupted because somebody else spoke a question.
Okay, so sorry, yes, you were saying that you get that you were going to ask me a question?
This is nationwide. You've focused on Sydney City. Shire. This is nationwide, is it?
So actually you guys are, I'm pretty sure you're limited state-wise. I'll just need to check that actually. So I'm thinking that you guys have got New South Wales. Bear with me one moment, actually. Let me just double check that for you quickly. Excuse me 1 minute here whilst I just do that a moment. So you're so are there people from different areas of the country here, may I ask?
Yes.
Right, okay, so let's forgive me a moment, let me just have a quick look here. Let's go to double check. Okay, so at the moment the subscription is set specifically for New South Wales. What's the range of geographical areas we've got in this call? So Alan, where are you located? Sorry.
I'm in Hobart.
You're in Hobart, okay. Do we have people here from Victoria? I mean, are we so essentially we're looking nationally then, is that correct?
I guess that'll be a question for Paul.
Yeah.
How?
So look, I'll need to address that.
We are looking nationally. Sorry, I'll just jump in. We pretty much have agents in most states of Australia.
Okay. So I will discuss with Paul, obviously, in terms of what's going on there. I'm not sure whether it was intended originally just to target New South Wales as a test, but let me take that up with him, if I may, and I'll come back to you to clarify that. Does anybody have any further questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much. So look, what we'll do then is we'll end it there if that's okay. I'll feed back to Paul about the conversation, and obviously I'm pretty sure he'll be asking you sort of what your thoughts are in terms of that as well. So if I can do that, and look, if you have any further questions, I will provide my my email details, obviously. So I have sent them to Paul. But please don't hesitate to come back to me and talk to me about any questions or any issues.
I just got a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yes, please.
You know, the view that we did today, the presentation was done with an admin sort of level, administrator sort of level, or this will be the level of access that Oxbridge will have?
Yep. That's a fair question. Yes, certainly. So it's true that I do indeed have unlimited access to the platform, but in fact, from your point of view, you will have access to the features that are available in there as well. We'll need to check in terms of the DA information exactly what it is. Paul is actually in communication with a couple of organizations about organizing some more definitive DA information for you. That's something that he's looking into at the moment. But yeah, I mean, essentially everything that I've looked at today, you should have access to in your subscription. Yes.
Okay, and one more question. So you mentioned at one point in there that it was required to have a subscription to so not just access to your platform, but also it's an API that it connects to a subscription of RP data. Or at one point you mentioned that we needed to have. So I saw you use Cordell. Yeah. Will Cordell be available?
So Cordell is not something that you guys have currently got turned on. You've actually got the BCI equivalent. All right.
Okay.
So that is So you don't have to have access to Cordell Connect or BCI to be able to access the information shown in here. You know, those are a separate standalone thing that we turn on for you to access in platform. Where separate subscriptions for different products might affect you would be a subscription, for instance, to RP Data. All right, so forgive me, just to be clear, you guys have got RP Data, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So basically what that means is, because you've got access to RP Data, the implication when you're looking at a particular site for, two implications. Firstly, this add-ons section over here means that you will have access to the CoreLogic property listings information as well. All right, so that's the first thing. So RP Data means that you should have access to CoreLogic listings information. But secondly, it also means that when you're clicking on a particular site and you're accessing the site details, when you scroll down to the sales history and you click on the CoreLogic button, assuming that property is recorded in CoreLogic's database, you can access the sales history for that particular site. In fact, CoreLogic don't let us populate the ownership information in this particular platform. You'll need to click that link there, see details in RP Data. That'll fly you into the RP Data platform and you'll be able to pick up the ownership information from there. Having access to RP Data means that you should also then be able to get the sales history for the properties that are indicated in this panel as well.
Brilliant, brilliant. So when you were also showing the map with the aerial view with the slopes, the lines that show, that will be, yeah, that it will be available for us too?
Yes.
Currently, okay, brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah, and actually that one shows in the report as well. You get that page come through in the report as well.
And floodings as well, as you mentioned.
Yep. Correct.
Okay. Oh, this is awesome, really.
Excellent.
Fabulous tool, thank you.
So I might leave you there unless anybody else has got any more questions. Okay.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for coming on. That was really informative.
I really appreciate the time, everybody. Thank you so much for that.
All right, have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, all of you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Speak soon. Bye-bye. Bye.